Hello guys, this is Deepika from mytutorialrack.com. Now in this tutorial, we are going to go ahead and design a UI which looks something similar to this one. So you can see here, we're going to go ahead and create a grid of 3 columns, and then whatever the elements that you're going to add will be added to the next row until the number of the columns is reached. So let's go ahead and do an example illustrating the same UI here. So going back to our developer console here, let's go ahead and create a brand new page called panelGrid. Example. And we're going to go ahead and create the brand new page. So here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my panelGrid tag. This is the name of the tag. And inside of this tag, the attribute that I'm going to specify is the columns, means how many columns this grid should have. So if I specified the number of columns to be 3, then the 4th element will get to the next row. And then the next attribute that I'm going to decide is the ID for this grid. So let's say the grid, it'll call it as the grid here. And then let's go ahead and start adding items to this grid. So let's say the first item that I want to add, there is a tag available called output text. So there is a tag called output text. As the name indicates, it is going to display something on the screen. So we have output text here. And what should this say? So we are going to specify the value attribute and we'll call it as first. And then the ID for this one, we'll call it as the first. That is the ID of this attribute. So we have added the first element to the grid. Similarly, what we can do is we can copy this line a couple times here. So here I'm going to go ahead and say second, and this is going to be the second. This would be third, and this is going to be third. Similarly, we have fourth, and this is going to be equals to 4th. Then you have is 5th, 7th, the 7th, then we have is 8th, pasted here. Then we have is the 9th, and then similarly we have this is the 9th. So now what we have done is we have created a grid for 3 columns, and the ID of the grid is the grid. And then we have added these 9 output text, 9 elements to this grid. So let's go ahead and hit the save button here. So you can see here it kind of arranged the elements in this fashion: 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and then the 4th element went to the next row, then 5th, then 6th, and then this 7th element went to the next row. So now let's go ahead, and right now this looks very like there's no border or anything. So what we can do here is we can provide the border, and let's say the border width is 3. So now if I go ahead and hit the save, you're going to see there is a border available now. And now the elements have been arranged in a more nicer and clean way. Similarly, let's say if I change the columns number from 3 to let's say 2, what will happen? So the output is going to look something different. So if I go ahead and see, the only columns would be 2 here. And since we only had 9 elements, so this particular cell is empty. So that is what it looks like. Now if I change the columns number to 4, then what's going to happen? There will be 4 columns, so there will be 4 elements in one row, and then another 4 elements in the second row, and the third row will only have 1 element because we only wanted to add the 9. We only are adding 9 elements. So let's leave it as it is, and let's make it columns is equals to 3 so it looks nicer. So panelGrid is going to arrange the elements in like a table-like structure, you can think, and has rows and columns, and based upon how many columns you have specified in this particular tag, those many columns will be created, and then the next element will go to the next row. So since here we have added the first element, second and third, and we have specified the column numbers to be 3, so the elements got added here, and then the next element got added to the next row. So that is what the panelGrid does. Now there is one important part of this panelGrid we can say is called grouping. If you want to group the elements together, let's say you wanted to group these 2 elements together. So how we are going to do that? There is a tag available called panel group. So let's say if I want to group these. Now what is the purpose of this panel group? This is a container for multiple child components so they can be displayed in a single panel grid cell. So if you wanted to display 2 elements or whatever number of elements in one cell instead of their own cell, if you wanted to display more than one element in a single panel grid cell, then you can use this panel group element. And how do you do it? So if I go ahead and there is a tag available called panel group, and whatever you have to do is all you have to do is add those whatever the elements you wanted to add to this group. You can just go ahead and close that group outside here. So what I'm doing is I have added the number 7th and the 8th. Right now they both have their own cell, but once I hit the save button, since I have added them into a group, the 7 and 8 will appear on the same cell. So here if I go ahead and hit the save button, you will see the 7 and 8 appear in the same cell. Similarly, if let's say I wanted to add this element also to this group, so here let's say cut, and then let me go ahead and paste it here. So now you're adding 3 elements, these 3 elements to this group. So what will happen is 7, 8 and 9 all will be under one cell. So all of them will be inside of this one particular cell here. So this is what is the purpose of this panel group. So it doesn't have to be at the end of the elements. You can even add the panel group anywhere in the between. So now let's go back and let's revert the changes and add the panel group in the middle of the grid. So let's say here I'm going to call it as panel group here. So what is the purpose of this panel group? It's a container for multiple child components so that they can be displayed in a single panel grid cell. So here I'm going to go ahead and add all these 3 elements inside of this panel group. So 4th, 5th and 6th. So all these 3, 4th, 5th and 6th will be available in one cell. So that is the purpose of the panel group. So panel group we talked about panel grid and the attributes that are related to the panel grid tag. I hope this example makes sense to you. You can arrange your elements. Let's say if you wanted to go ahead and arrange opportunities name in a form of this grid, you can do that. So that is the purpose of a grid.